2 years ago, my phone rang at 11:47 p.m. It was Frank, a man who's been part of my family since I was a kid. All he said was, "They're all walking away, every single one at once." I didn't understand what that meant right away. What I didn't know is that Frank had spent 45 years building something with his own hands, standing on an empty field in 1979, and by the time that call ended, it was already over. Not because he made a bad decision, over because of something that didn't even exist the year he broke ground. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how a shopping mall makes money, what actually took Frank's mall down, and it's not what most people would guess, and the exact price he paid. In this video, I'm giving you 3 things. 1. How a shopping mall actually makes money, from opening day to 45 years later. 4 distinct revenue streams, and how they interact explains exactly why what happened to Frank happened so slowly, then so fast. 2. How online shopping took apart an entire industry without firing a shot, in stages, across 3 decades, and almost nobody noticed until the very last one. 3. The exact price Frank paid. Not just what disappeared on paper, the real check he had to write, out of his own savings. I'm holding on to that number for later. I'm John. This channel is where I document real financial decisions, mine and the people I know. No finance degree, no head start, just real numbers and mistakes owned in full. If you'd rather understand how a 45-year investment can collapse before you live through one yourself, subscribe. New video every 2 to 3 days, 100% value, no fluff. Now, let's go back to 1979. One more thing before we go. Frank didn't say, "The market changed." He said, "They're all walking away, every single one at once." By the end of this video, you'll know exactly who they were and why it took 45 years for that sentence to become true. In 1979, Frank was 28, and he and 2 partners broke ground on a shopping mall on the edge of Indianapolis. I'll call it Meridian Square. Here's something almost nobody remembers. By the late 1970s, enclosed malls were going up across the country at a rate of nearly 60 a year. The tail end of the biggest building boom retail real estate has ever seen. Building from nothing cost his group the equivalent of $19 million today. Frank put in $1,750,000 of his own money. His 35% share of $5 million raised between 3 partners. The rest, $14 million, came from a construction loan. Frank didn't improvise the design. The layout followed principles laid out by an American developer named Alfred Taubman, who coined the phrase threshold resistance to describe the hesitation that keeps a shopper from walking into a store, which is why anchor department stores sat roughly 3 blocks apart, forcing foot traffic past dozens of small shops along the way. A Sears at one end, a JCPenney at the other, 40 shops in between. Taubman's bigger insight was treating the mall itself as climate-controlled, single-destination theater, comfortable enough that people stayed for hours without ever wanting to leave. I was 6 years old the first time Frank snuck me a soft pretzel at the food court. By the mid-90s, Meridian Square had 58 stores, a movie theater, and 92% occupancy. It was honestly the center of that town. Even though in 1989 it came within weeks of missing payroll. Frank never talked about how close it came. He quietly covered the shortfall out of his own savings, and by the following spring, the mall was full again. Here's what almost nobody outside commercial real estate understands, and it's the key to everything that happens later in this video. A shopping mall makes money 4 ways at once. Layer 1, fixed rent. A small specialty shop pays significantly more per square foot than a big anchor store, sometimes 2 to 3 times more. The store with the most space and the most visibility often pays the lowest rate in the entire mall because it isn't really paying for space. It's paying for its name and for the foot traffic that name pulls past every small shop on the way in. Every other tenant is quietly subsidizing that discount. Layer 2. Percentage rent. A base amount plus a cut of sales above an agreed threshold, usually 5 to 8%. Money that costs the landlord nothing to collect because it only shows up once the tenant is already doing well. Layer 3. Common area maintenance. Every tenant pays their share of upkeep, prorated by square footage. Layer 4. Everything that isn't a store. Kiosks, parking, advertising, seasonal events. And here's the detail almost nobody notices. A kiosk selling sunglasses at the busiest intersection in a mall can occupy less than 100 square feet and generate more revenue per square foot than an entire anchor store. Position beats size. Force the walk, maximize the exposure, charge them most exactly where their feet already are. Now hold on to one thing before we keep going. All four of these revenue layers, fixed rent, percentage rent, common area maintenance, kiosks, share a single assumption underneath them, that people physically walk through the building. Every dollar Meridian Square ever made across 45 years depended on that one fact staying true. It stopped being true. In 1994, 15 years after Frank broke ground, a company called Amazon was founded in a garage in Seattle. It sold books online. Nobody at Meridian Square noticed because there was nothing to notice yet. Here's what makes this story different from an ordinary business failure. Nothing went wrong at Meridian Square for almost 20 years. Online shopping was background noise, a curiosity, then a convenience, then something people used for a few categories and nothing else. New retail square footage under construction nationwide actually peaked back in 1985. The industry didn't know it yet, but it was already past its high point. E-commerce's share of U.S. retail sales was close to zero when Frank's Mall opened. By the time most people took it seriously, it had already been quietly compounding underneath the entire industry for more than 2 decades. Then two things happened almost at once, and that's when 30 years of compounding finally became visible. In 2020, JCPenney, one of Meridian Square's 2 anchor stores, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on May 15th, citing the pandemic and years of eroding department store sales. The store closed for good 8 months later. Every point of market share online shopping picked up was foot traffic that used to walk past 40 shops on its way to that anchor, and now walked past nothing at all. With the anchor gone, Meridian Square's co-tenancy clauses activated, the fine print buried in nearly every mall lease that lets smaller tenants pay reduced rent or walk away entirely if an anchor closes. 18 months later, 16 of the remaining tenants had either broken their lease or renegotiated down. And Frank's story isn't a one-off. The same pattern is playing out across the country in real time. Randall Park Mall, outside Cleveland, once marketed as the world's largest shopping center when it opened in 1976 for $175 million, 2.2 million square feet, over 200 stores. It closed in 2009. By 2018, the site had been leveled and replaced with an Amazon distribution center. The exact company that helped empty it now ships packages from the same ground. Same mechanism, different state, just a sharper irony. Frank has never actually been to North Randall, Ohio. He didn't need to. Then occupancy did what occupancy does. It kept sliding, and here's the trap almost nobody sees coming. A mall can look nearly full and still lose money because occupancy and revenue aren't the same thing. At Meridian Square, common area charges ran about $310,000 a year. That number doesn't drop when stores leave. It just gets divided across fewer paying tenants, so each remaining shop's bill climbed by roughly 40%, while nothing about the building's actual upkeep changed. Tenants who'd stayed loyal for 20 years started asking, in writing, for guarantees that the anchor problem wouldn't repeat itself. Nobody could actually give them one. By 2013, occupancy had already fallen to 68%, the first real crack. By 2020, 41%. By 2023, 19%. Back in 2013, at refinancing, the mall had been valued at $11 million. Frank's 35% stake was worth $3,850,000 on paper, and he'd personally guaranteed $1,200,000 of that new loan. In 2024, the bank forced the sale. Meridian Square, the mall Frank broke ground on with a shovel in 1979, sold for $950,000. The $3,850,000 his stake was worth on paper in 2013, gone. And because he'd personally guaranteed that loan, the bank came after him directly to cover the shortfall. He signed a check for $58,000 out of his retirement savings to settle a debt on a building that no longer existed. 45 years. Not because the mall was ever fully empty. It never was. Because a shift that started in a garage in Seattle in 1994 finally finished compounding, and a clause almost nobody reads turned it into a chain reaction nobody could stop in time. Here's what I keep coming back to. Frank didn't do anything reckless. He built something real, right in the middle of the mall building boom, with the best thinking available at the time, and it worked for 30 years. The problem isn't that Frank made a mistake in 1979. It's that almost nobody who builds an asset meant to last 45 years also plans for its ability to absorb a threat that doesn't exist yet on the day they build it. His entire net worth was tied to one building in one town. That same $1,750,000 spread across a diversified real estate investment trust instead of a single property would have absorbed this shift the way 100 small waves absorb one big one. That's the part that's hard to sit with. Not that Frank did something wrong, but that the exact same discipline that built something real also concentrated all of the risk in one place, at one address, under one name. Frank is 72 now. He's not broke, and he never had to move. The mall was never his only business, and he still runs several others today, including one I'll get into soon. His old tenants, meanwhile, are doing fine. They just moved online. The businesses survived. The building didn't. If this video was useful, send it to the one person you know who thinks a physical business once built is never at risk again. It's never not at risk. Not after 1 year, not after 30. But the mall was only one piece of what Frank built. In 2 days, I'm telling you about another business he's run for over 20 years, one that keeps things in the air. That's all I'll say for now. Before you go, which number in today's video hit you hardest? The $58,000 check or the $3.85 million on paper? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Look, if you're still watching at this point, this channel obviously does something for you. Subscribing costs you nothing. 1 tap, 2 seconds. For this channel, it's everything. It's the only reason the next video gets made at all. I'm John. New video every 2 to 3 days. Free, no fluff. See you in 2 days.